frankincense, and so was the myrrh. So that any of them could have represented wealth, you have to look past what it was. The gold signified much more than wealth. The gold signified worth. They were giving of their worth. Even today, we often say that somebody is worth their weight in gold. We talk about their worth. Job said it like this. He said, "But he knoweth the way that I take. When he hath tried me, I shall come forth as gold." What Job was saying was, when I come out of this refining fire, I am going to be better than I was before I went in. When I come out of this fire, I'm going to be more valuable. My worth is going to be greater than when I went in. After he brings me through it, I'm going to be more valuable than when he brought me to it. So then your gold here is that which signifies those things we value. And more importantly, the things that we value about ourselves. God not only wants the peripherals of your life, he wants what you value the most. What is it about you that you think is so awesome, or that you feel is so great, and that others have pointed out in you and said, that is wonderful? God says, that's what I want from you. I want you to offer me that which makes you feel worthy of something. I want you to give me that which identifies your own worth. Tight in here today. Y'all better pray. It's not all they gave. After giving the gold, they gave frankincense. The frankincense was a specific and aromatic type of incense, one of sweet smelling savor that caused all of the sacrifices to smell sweet in the nostrils of God. It was used in the worship of the temple. It was used in the holy place. In the holy place, the frankincense was burned. In the tabernacle and then in the temple, pure and of a sweet smelling savor. And since this is an offering, a sacrifice, it is worship. It is associated with worship, and this is what God is saying, I want from you. I want worship. I want worship. I don't want absent-minded praise. I want worship. I don't want formality. I want worship. I want somebody who wouldn't mind falling on their knees or falling on their face or crying out because I am so great and I am so awesome. I want worship. And because it is associated with sacrifice, this is a worship that God says I want whenever I want it, however I want it. It's not about how you feel you ought to worship or what you think you ought to be doing, but it is what God is calling for. Can I preach like I feel it? God is saying, I don't want worship just when you feel it's convenient. I don't want it just in a way that pleases you, but I want you to worship me the way I want to be worshiped. I want the worship that I am calling for. And what kind of worship is that? Jesus told the woman at the well of Samaria like this: the Father seeks those who will worship him in spirit and in truth. What are you saying? High. He's saying, I want those who will first of all worship with fervency in the spirit of the living God, who will give their all in worship. And then I want somebody who will worship me with the right kind of attitude. Can I preach like I feel it? Some of what we call worship is not worship. It's just presentation. Because if the attitude is wrong, God says it ain't right. It's not what I want. If it's just a presentation, make it to the church. If it's just a presentation, call a press conference. But if it's worship, then do it with the right attitude. The kind of attitude that says, I will serve thee because I love thee. He said, I don't just want you to worship me in spirit, but I also want you to worship me in truth. The right attitude, with the right kind of energy, and with an honest heart. Open before the Lord, taking it and giving it to him, saying, you know how I am and you know who I am, and I may not be perfect, but I'm not hiding anything from you. Take me as I am and make me what you want me to be. Oh, come on, somebody, lift your hands and worship. And then finally, the Magi gave myrrh. They brought to the child Jesus myrrh, another aromatic spice. We all know that myrrh is associated with the death of Christ. According to Matthew 15 and 31, it was in the cup that Jesus drank on the cross, or that was given to him to drink on the cross. And according to John 19, verse number 39, it was among the burial spices that his body was wrapped in before it was laid in that garden tomb. These things have led many to conclude that myrrh is symbolic and significant of suffering. And I guess that that's as valid a type as any other for myrrh. But let me submit something else to you today. Let me try to get you to look at myrrh another way. I believe that because myrrh is so closely associated with the death of Christ, and dying is what Christ came to do. Did you hear what I said? Dying is what he came to do. That was the work of Christ. The work of Christ was not to heal the sick. The work of Christ was not to raise the dead. The work of Christ was not to open blind eyes or unstop deaf ears. It was not to make the lame to walk and the mute to talk or to cast out demons. Those were blessings by the way as he passed through our lives. But the work of Christ was to nail himself to an accursed tree, shed his blood, and die for us. That was his work. And so the myrrh that is associated with his death becomes not so symbolic of suffering, but rather of surrender and service. So when you are presenting unto God your myrrh, you're saying, I am giving my works. I'm giving my service. Like Jesus, we are here to work the works of him who sent us. And in fact, works are important to us as God's people. While they do not save us, they most certainly do identify us. And if we do our works correctly, if we do that which God has given us to do, then we bring honor to God. Do you remember how Jesus put it in his great Sermon on the Mount? He said, let your light so shine before others that men may see your good works and do what? Glorify your Father which is in heaven. Your works for the Lord ought to bring glory to God. Can I preach? Can I talk about it for just a moment here? And I've got to talk about it because this is another thing that puzzles me about what the people of God do and how the people of God are. We are caught up in something as worldly can be, and that is the cult of personality. Yes, the cult of personality is alive and well in the church of God. It was alive in the early church. This is why Paul wrote to the Corinthians and rebuked them when they said, some say I am of Paul, and others say I am of Apollos, and still others say I am of Christ. Well, we don't say it like that today, but we'll say this one is my preacher and that one is my singer. It's not about the person, it's about the message and the purpose. Can I preach like I want to? Oh, yes. We get caught up in folk. We get caught up in people. And if our preacher is not preaching, we really don't want to hear it. And let me go ahead.